Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure and a distinct honor to address you this evening at a gathering rich in dialogue, exchange, and forward-looking perspectives. First, I wish to express my sincere gratitude to the French Ministry for Europe and Foreign Affairs and the Access to Nutrition Initiative, in partnership with Global Health Advocates and Global Nutrition Report, for making this convening possible and for their unwavering commitment to advancing nutrition globally. We are gathered today around a cause of a critical importance and at a decisive moment in the fight against malnutrition. Malnutrition is not merely a health issue, it's a violation of children's rights. It endangers life, compromises growth, and prevents children from reaching their full potential. Even today, it remains one of the leading causes of death and disease among children under 5. But it is not inevitable. We have both the power and the responsibility to act. Together, we can ensure that every child has a chance to grow, to thrive, and to fulfill their full potential. In recent years, we have achieved significant progress. Better healthcare, expanded nutrition programs, and strong international mobilization have led to measurable results. The reduction in stunting among young children is a clear illustration of what we can achieve when we act collectively. Yet, for the first time in years, these gains are now under pressure. In many regions, key indicators of child health and nutrition are beginning to reverse. UNICEF, the World Health Organization, and the World Bank are clear. Without renewed commitment and decisive action, the goal to eliminate all forms of malnutrition by 2030 will remain out of reach. The situation demands urgent attention. In 2026, according to the latest estimates, 150 million children are stunted and nearly 43 million are wasted, including 12 million with its more severe form. But behind these numbers, we have human realities and crises of unprecedented severity. Causes are well known: conflicts, barrier to humanitarian assistance, climate disruption, forced displacement, and the collapse of essential services. Much of the suffering affecting children today is man-made and preventable. 2 famines have been officially declared in Sudan and in Gaza. In conflict zones such as Darfur, severe acute malnutrition has doubled, and in the Gaza Strip, according to the new IPC report, at least 1.6 million, representing 77% of the population, are facing acute food insecurity, including 100,000 children. This is just unacceptable. Yet, even as needs reach unprecedented levels, international support is faltering, and multilateralism is in retreat. Modeling studies warn that funding cuts could lead to as many as 5.4 million additional deaths among children under 5 by 2030. Without urgent action, millions more children will face increasing risk of severe malnutrition and preventable death. In a deeply interconnected world, international solidarity and national interests are not in opposition. They reinforce each other. Weakening global cooperation diminishes our collective ability to respond to shared challenges. Every budget cut strains fragile system. Every service disruption affects lives. Every setback today compromises the future of an entire generation. But there is still an opportunity to act. We have the responsibility to maintain momentum, to safeguard both life-saving assistance and long-term development, and to ensure that children are never the first to bear consequences of budgetary trade-offs. To act is to invest in nutrition. Every dollar invested in addressing malnutrition generates, on average, $23 in social and economic benefits. To act is to protect essential services, ensuring that no child is left without care. To act is to prevent hard-won progress from being undone by inaction. We possess knowledge, tools, and solutions. It's now incumbent upon us to sustain momentum, translate commitment into actions, and deliver tangible, lasting impact for every child, everywhere. These are precisely the issues that will be addressed shortly, 1 year on from the legacy of the N4G in Paris, by our distinguished panelists, whom I will have the pleasure to introduce in this event. Representing civil society, NGOs, international organizations, and governments. Now, if I may, I would like to switch to French to introduce you to Madame Éléonore Carrois, delegate to the Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs, responsible for Francophonie, international partnerships, and French citizens abroad. Madame la Ministre, chère Éléonore Carrois, je sais d'expérience à quel point vous êtes profondément engagée dans la lutte contre la malnutrition. Il y a un peu plus d'1 an, en amont du sommet N4G, nous avons eu la chance de vous compter parmi les membres de notre délégation, avec Briepont et son équipe, lors d'un voyage sur le terrain organisé par l'UNICEF au Bangladesh, notamment dans les camps de réfugiés de Cox's Bazar. Sur place, vous avez pu constater combien les interventions spécifiques à la nutrition se complètent et sont indispensables, en particulier pour les femmes enceintes et allaitantes, les jeunes filles, ainsi que durant les 1000 premiers jours de l'enfant, une période déterminante pour son développement. Madame la Ministre, je vous laisse la parole.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to do a bit of housekeeping. Do you all have headphones? Because I will be speaking French, obviously. Yes, you do? Great. Mesdames et messieurs les ministres, mesdames et messieurs les élus, madame la directrice exécutive, chère Diane, mesdames et messieurs les représentants d'organisations internationales et de banques de développement, chers partenaires de la société civile, du secteur privé, des philanthropies, de la recherche, mesdames et messieurs en vos grades et qualités, tout protocole observé, chers amis, chers citoyens qui vous préoccupez pour cet enjeu majeur qu'est la nutrition. Je suis particulièrement heureuse d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui pour ouvrir cet événement consacré à la nutrition. Vous l'avez dit, chère Anne, près d'1 an après le sommet « Nutrition pour la croissance », Nutrition for Growth, comme l'avait annoncé le président de la République. Permettez-moi tout d'abord de remercier très chaleureusement nos coordinateurs, Access to Nutrition Initiative, Action Santé Mondiale, ONU Nutrition et le Global Nutrition Report qui porte la dynamique N4G sur le terrain. Et c'est de là qu'il faut partir, du terrain. Sur le terrain, vous le voyez, nous le voyons tous, les conflits se multiplient. Au Soudan, à Gaza, en Iran, en Ukraine, et j'en oublie tellement d'autres, dans de nombreuses régions du monde. C'est une donne que nous devons intégrer à nos réflexions en matière de nutrition aujourd'hui. Parce que dans une zone de conflit, vous le savez, vous qui êtes souvent sur le terrain, la question de la malnutrition n'est que plus douloureuse. Et réciproquement, comme l'a rappelé le président de la République, la nutrition a des effets bien concrets en matière de géopolitique, en matière de santé, en matière de climat. Lutter contre la malnutrition, c'est aussi et peut-être d'abord œuvrer à la stabilité dans le monde, à la paix dans le monde. Et c'est pourquoi nous devons être particulièrement fiers de ce sommet Nutrition for Growth, Nutrition pour la croissance, qui a été organisé en France, à Paris, et qui fut un succès historique. Et je cherche des yeux bruyeux, je ne le vois pas, il est là. Et je cherche des yeux bruyeux parce que je pense qu'on peut l'applaudir. Il s'y attendait pas. Ouais. Non. La raison pour laquelle je vous demande de l'applaudir, c'est parce que je me souviens, il y a donc un peu plus d'un an et demi, Brue qui m'appelle et qui me dit « Bon, je suis en charge d'organiser un sommet, c'est hyper important, c'est fondamental, il faut qu'on le fasse, mais alors là, on va pas forcément y arriver en termes d'engagement, d'argent, il faut qu'on donne une portée politique. » Et en fait, Brue, non seulement tu as réussi à donner, enfin vous avez tous réussi à donner, c'est important le collectif, mais il faut quand même parfois rendre hommage à ceux qui ont porté à bout de bras quelque chose. Tu as réussi à faire de ce sommet non seulement un sommet politique, mais aussi 600 engagements pris, 30,5 milliards de dollars mobilisés. Je peux dire que 18 mois avant, 1 an avant, 6 mois avant le sommet, on n'y croyait pas du tout. Bien au-delà des attentes des précédents sommets et surtout 200 délégations réunies prouvant que la communauté internationale sait se rassembler et sait s'engager. Alors, quels ont été les engagements de la France lors du N4G ? Suite à la conférence, la France a mis en œuvre une nouvelle stratégie nationale pour l'alimentation, la nutrition et le climat à horizon 2030, en faveur d'une alimentation saine et durable, qui vise notamment à améliorer la qualité de l'offre alimentaire en l'encadrant la qualité nutritionnelle des repas servis en restauration collective. Cela fait évidemment écho à des lois qui avaient été promues, votées, adoptées, pas toujours complètement mises en œuvre, mais à des engagements de longue date, mais qui ont pu être accélérés au moment du sommet. Surtout, la France s'est engagée à l'international en mobilisant 750 millions d'euros d'ici 2030. Je vous confirme ce jour qu'en moins d'1 an, nous avons atteint 50% de cet objectif. Et je peux vous dire que par les temps qui courent, c'est plutôt une très belle réussite et nous continuons. Pour mesurer les effets, il faut aller au-delà, au plus près du terrain. Aux Philippines, par exemple, où l'AFD soutient le programme national Walang Gutom 2027, ce qui veut dire, et pardon pour les Philippins, enfin ceux qui parleraient tagalog dans la salle, parce que j'ai dû mal le prononcer, mais ça doit vouloir dire faim zéro, aux côtés de la Banque asiatique de développement et du fonds OFEP. Ce dispositif fournit une aide alimentaire et nutritionnelle à des centaines de milliers de ménages vulnérables, tout en favorisant leur autonomie à plus long terme. La nutrition demeure donc une priorité de notre politique étrangère. Au cœur de l'engagement de la France pour la nutrition, il y a l'initiative française pour la sécurité alimentaire et la nutrition, IFSAN, qui permet d'apporter un appui concret aux populations et fonctionne grâce à vous, les actrices et les acteurs du terrain qui sont présents ici à Lyon ce soir. Donc moi, je parle évidemment au nom du gouvernement français, mais vous le savez, ce sont des convictions profondes et personnelles qui s'expriment, des convictions que je sais que vous partagez parce que vous les portez chaque jour dans vos organisations, dans les institutions que vous représentez. Vous l'avez rappelé, chère Anne, ce déplacement au Bangladesh, à Cox's Bazar, pour voir au plus près du terrain comment cette action coordonnée, efficace, permet de sauver des vies. Parce que il ne faut pas perdre de vue l'essentiel. On peut parler de chiffres, on peut parler d'engagement, on peut parler de pledge. À la fin, on est en train de parler de vie humaine, on est en train de parler d'enfants qui ne vont pas avoir les nutriments nécessaires à leur développement physique, moteur, cérébral. On est en train de parler de sociétés entières qui ne vont pas pouvoir répondre correctement aux défis qui se présentent à elles. On est en train de parler de choses très, très, très concrètes. Et vous le savez, c'est pour cela que moi, à titre personnel cette fois-ci, j'aimerais vous remercier. Notre engagement, votre engagement contre ce fléau, contre la malnutrition, ne date pas d'hier et c'est la raison pour laquelle nous devons rappeler quelques faits, rappeler notamment que ces 1000 premiers jours sont indispensables et que pour cela, les produits nutritionnels spécialisés peuvent sauver des vies. Et je pense d'ailleurs à certaines entreprises, à certains groupes et à Nutri7 en particulier et au rôle qu'ils jouent, mais il y en a beaucoup d'autres. Une autre conviction, c'est qu'il faut aller plus loin. Nous devons agir sur les conséquences profondes de la malnutrition, pas seulement être en réponse, mais évidemment en prévention. prévention et dans un sommet dédié à une seule santé, avec un énorme accent mis sur la prévention. C'est important de le dire. Il faut renforcer les systèmes alimentaires, les rendre durables, l'accès aux services de santé, lutter contre l'inégalité de genre, parce que oui, la question du genre est partout, n'en déplaise à certains qui voudraient qu'on arrête de parler de genre. Ben non, en fait on le voit, y compris dans le domaine de la nutrition, à quel point c'est important. Et le changement climatique, là aussi, il faut le dire, le marteler. Le climat change en grande partie à cause de l'action de l'homme et ça a un impact sur notre santé. Pardon, ça vous semble, vous, une évidence que je dis ici, mais ça ne l'est pas pour tout le monde, donc autant le rappeler. Donc cette réunion va nous permettre de rendre compte de nos progrès respectifs 1 an après N4G. Nous lançons ce soir, vous lancez ce soir, un processus de restitution avec l'appui du Global Nutrition Report dont je veux souligner l'importance. J'appelle ainsi solennellement toutes les parties prenantes à alimenter, sans jeu de mots, ce processus. Ça va nous permettre d'engager la suite de votre dynamique, en particulier avec le secteur privé et les banques, parce que finalement, il faut évidemment financer. Les marchés alimentaires doivent se transformer. Cela ne se fera pas sans les entreprises, sans les investisseurs, sans des régulations intelligentes. Il faut lancer cet appel et le lancer aussi auprès des élus que je vois dans la salle et que je n'ai pas salués et qui sont évidemment tout aussi engagés. Cet événement est labellisé G7 car il répond pleinement aux objectifs de la présidence française du G7. Il s'inscrit dans les travaux de la filière développement que j'ai l'honneur de mener. Et lors de la ministérielle développement G7 qui aura lieu à la fin de ce mois-ci, je veillerai personnellement à ce que nous adoptions un langage ambitieux à la hauteur des exigences qui s'expriment ici. Alors un langage en diplomatie, mesdames et messieurs, vous le savez, c'est important, parce que derrière le langage, il y a les engagements, il y a les actions concrètes, et encore une fois, on ne perd pas de vue l'essentiel, il y a les vies. Donc merci à chacun et chacune d'entre vous pour votre action, pour votre engagement. Le travail du multilatéralisme, le vrai travail du multilatéralisme que la France défend avec conviction, c'est un travail de dialogue qui prend du temps, qui nécessite beaucoup de patience, de la compréhension, de l'empathie pour aller convaincre, pour aller rallier, pour construire des coalitions. Et il faut que chacune et chacun d'entre nous puisse le faire et faire en sorte que cette dynamique persiste, que tous les pays engagés aillent chercher de nouveaux partenaires. Le rapporteur spécial de l'ONU sur le droit à l'alimentation, Jean Ziegler, disait il y a près de 20 ans que la faim n'était pas une fatalité, mais une injustice. Et nous avons les moyens de nourrir le monde. Ce qui nous manque, c'est la volonté. Aujourd'hui, ces mots résonnent et ils sont particulièrement vrais. J'en veux pour preuve les travaux que nous avons menés, notamment avec mon collègue parlementaire Guillaume Garot, sur le gaspillage alimentaire et avec beaucoup d'autres. Et je vois ici Sabrina Sebaï, que je salue à l'instant. D'autres parlementaires engagés pour lutter contre ces sujets localement, des municipalités, comme l'est aussi la ville de Lyon, comme le sont beaucoup de municipalités à travers la France, mais des États, des pays pour lutter justement contre cette injustice qui est la faim dans le monde. La mobilisation de Paris a vu naître cette volonté. C'était l'amorce d'un mouvement durable, un mouvement à l'international que le président de la République a voulu porter à l'international avec ses sommets Une seule santé, qui rappelle l'essentiel, que nos systèmes de santé sont interconnectés. Et ce que nous faisons à Lyon, c'est la suite que nous inventons ensemble. Et donc je compte évidemment sur chacune et chacun d'entre vous, comme vous pouvez évidemment compter sur moi. Je vous souhaite d'excellents travaux et je vous remercie d'être les porte-voix d'une cause aussi importante.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Ministre, et nous savons que nous pouvons compter sur votre engagement et votre énergie pour faire reculer la faim dans le monde. I would now like to turn to our distinguished panelists. This session will begin with an opening segment followed by 2 roundtable discussions. To open our discussions, I'm pleased to give the floor to Mr. Akihiko Nishio, following by Dr. 1 minute, Najat Mokhtar, who will reflect on why last year's Nutrition for Growth Summit marked a pivotal moment, and she will be followed by Dr. Shibani Ghosh and Dr. Johan Reisin, who will help frame our discussion by underscoring the crucial importance of the issues before us today, as well as the significance of holding this session in advance of the One Health Summit. Mr. ATNi, Vice President of Development Finance at the World Bank, will talk about development finance and why investing in nutrition and food system is crucial in the current environment. Mr. Nisho, I hand over to you.
Merci, mesdames et messieurs. Je suis vraiment très honoré et aussi ravi d'être ici, d'avoir l'opportunité de parler avec vous sur un sujet qui est vraiment très proche à mon cœur, c'est la lutte contre la malnutrition. Je suis arrivé hier de Washington, D.C. C'est loin, mais j'ai pensé que c'est une occasion que je dois assister parce que c'est vraiment très important. Et je vous remercie pour avoir préparé tel beau temps ici à Lyon. Et je vais changer maintenant en anglais. So, much progress has been made over the last 2 decades. And the impressive commitments were made at the N4G Summit in Paris. However, the current data indicate the magnitude of the remaining challenges. For example, the average adult height, which is a marker of population health, has been declining in many countries. In fact, in several sub-Saharan African countries, adults are shorter today than they were 25 years ago. This is based on a recent World Bank research. It's a paper called Building Human Capital Where It Matters, which you may want to find on the internet. Stunting, which Eleanor talked about, which is about low height for age among children, remains above 30% in many low-income countries, especially those in sub-Saharan Africa and in South Asia. Conflict, fragility, high food prices, and the COVID pandemic have all contributed to such gaps in progress. Stunting impairs the growth of children's brains, the nervous system, which cannot be made up in future. The World Bank estimates that a country with 30% stunting rate faces a reduction in future worker productivity by about 10%. Stunting also compounds losses in education. Stunted and anemic children are more likely to drop out of school and learn less while enrolled. However, we see some significant progress in some countries. For instance, in Indonesia, World Bank projects launched in 2018 are supporting the national effort to accelerate childhood nutrition and reduce stunting through a multi-sector government-led platform. And I had the privilege of visiting the project site and seeing the progress with my own eyes. The program increases access to both nutrition-specific and nutrition-sensitive interventions in the first 1,000 days of life by reaching pregnant women, infants, and young children. As a result, child stunting fell by 9 percentage points in just 5 years, which is unprecedented. Now, I've seen stunting numbers in many countries, but this is completely off the charts. And we also see that countries like Peru are also succeeding in reducing stunting rates. And I think this is really important because reducing stunting rates is really making a difference for children, for our next generations. And now, as we continue our effort, let us commit to learn from the experience that I touched on in Indonesia and elsewhere. What has worked and what hasn't worked? And let's share experiences so that we can enhance capacities to ensure meaningful impacts everywhere. To that end, the World Bank has committed to developing the Nutrition Integration Knowledge Platform. It is a user-centered, one-stop shop to help governments, development partners, and other stakeholders access practical knowledge on integrating nutrition into policies, programs, and investment. It will also enable the sharing of experiences and learning on the road to nutrition for growth in 2028. The World Bank is also expanding our lending for nutrition. We aim to mobilize at least $5 billion in nutrition-related activities over the next 5 years. We have also committed to support at least 45 AIDA countries, these are low-income countries, before July 2028, to design and implement agriculture sector reforms and also investment programs aimed at increasing food and nutrition security. Through national health compacts launched last year with 16 developing countries, we support those countries to integrate essential nutrition services into our initiative to deliver quality, affordable health services to 1.5 billion people by the year 2030. This would also help align ministries of health and finance behind measurable results. But to make further progress on nutrition, the most important thing, I believe, is to work together through partnerships. Partnerships among donors, private sector, international organizations, and so forth. Sharing knowledge, co-financing to reduce transaction costs for recipient countries, and mobilizing grants to catalyze funding for middle-income countries are all important ways of working together, through which we can deliver on the commitments we made a year ago in Paris at the N4G. I also believe that the One Health Summit and this particular session offer an excellent opportunity to work together towards achieving such commitments collectively. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nishio, for your insightful words. And it just reminds us how crucial investing in nutrition is to fight against malnutrition. I will now give the floor to Dr. Najat Mokhtar, Chair of UN Nutrition, who will set the scene by discussing the importance of nutrition, the role of commitment, and, most importantly, accountability.
Merci, Anne. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. And it's a true honor to address you today on my capacity as the UN Nutrition Chair, chairing the United Nations coordination mechanism that brings together 15 UN entities working together to help tackle malnutrition in all its forms. And I'm here today to convey this message from all of them. We meet again here in Lyon, 1 year after the very successful Nutrition for Growth Summit in Paris. We are here to take stock on progress and renew our collective energy at a time of profound global uncertainty. Between the impact of climate change, we have heard, conflicts and increasing fragility, access to healthy diet and good nutrition is often among the first and the hardest hit. There is a broad recognition that good nutrition is fundamental to health, growth, and development, as we have heard, as well as to social and economic well-being and equity. A healthy diet is essential to preventing all forms of malnutrition, including diet-related non-communicable diseases. Yet, the latest evidence reminds us how far we still have to go. According to the 2025 State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World report, an estimate of 2.6 billion people, nearly 1/3 of the world's population, could not afford a healthy diet in 2024. Undernourishment affects approximately 673 million people. While some regions have made progress, hunger continues to rise in Africa and Western Africa. Food crises are also deepening, according to the 2025 Global Report on Food Crisis. In 2024, an estimate of 295 million people faced a high level of acute food insecurity, with 227 million of them living in 40 countries or territories. And these challenges coexist with a growing epidemic of obesity, of course. Since 1990, adult obesity has more than doubled. In school-aged children and adolescents, according to UNICEF 2025 Child Nutrition Report, obesity surpassed underweight as the most prevalent form of malnutrition, affecting 1 in 10 or 188 million children. And today, more than 1 billion people are living with obesity worldwide. In short, the burden of malnutrition in all its forms continues to grow. Addressing it requires stronger policy, coherence, and coordination. It demands concerted action across sectors, especially at a time when the global system's capacity to respond is becoming constrained, as we see sharp reduction in humanitarian funding. This widening gap is one of the defined challenges we face today, and yet there is a reason for hope. First, because nutrition remains one of the smartest investments we can make. Every dollar invested can generate up to $23 in return. Second, because government and partners increasingly recognize that lasting progress requires nutrition integration across sectors through whole of government and whole of society approaches. Third, because of Nutrition for Growth, a powerful global platform mobilizing leadership and financing every 4 years. 1 year ago in Paris, this platform brought together government of a wide range of partners, from civil society to development banks, UN agencies, and the private sector. We extend our deep appreciation to the government of France for its leadership and commitment. Together, over 550 commitments were made, mobilizing nearly $30 billion to advance nutrition where it needed most. And I'm sure you all join me today in thanking France for their stellar leadership. But commitments are only the beginning. Commitment is only the beginning. What matters is how these commitments are translated into real results, especially for the most vulnerable. This is where accountability is essential. Since 2014, the Global Nutrition Report has played a central role in tackling progress and strengthening transparency. Today, together with the Nutrition Accountability Framework, it provides a robust system to monitor commitment and ensure follow-through. The UN system also remains fully engaged across UN nutrition member agencies. Commitments are being actively pursued, even in the context of constrained resources and growing needs. At the same time, We are exploring ways to sustain momentum between summits through a more permanent support mechanism. And this conversation does not end today. I invite you to engage and continue to this discussion during the Rome Nutrition Week 2026 in May, where we will continue shaping the future of joint nutrition actions. You are all warmly invited to join us. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let us use this moment here in Lyon to assess our progress and reaffirm our determination and shared responsibility to keep nutrition at the heart of sustainable development. Looking ahead, we must stay focused and act together. We must protect a scale-up investment, continue to innovate, and strengthen collaboration across sectors, always placing people at the center of our efforts, because ultimately, development is all about people, and good nutrition for all is where development begins. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mokhtar, and thank you for reminding our nutrition is a fundamental right. Sorry. May I ask to our upcoming speakers to stick to the timing because we are a bit running out of time. So now I will give the floor to Dr. Shibani Ghosh. She's a co-chair of Independent Expert Group Global Nutrition Report, GNR, and she will present a one-year stock take of the N4G commitments, including what was committed and the collective trends seen across this commitment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne, for the very kind introduction. I'm keeping my phone here, so I'll keep track of time. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen, respected officials, colleagues, friends. It's an enormous pleasure and honor and privilege for me to be here representing the Global Nutrition Report. For those of you who may not be familiar, we are an accountability mechanism that supports the Nutrition for Growth Summit, but we are also the independent entity that produces updates on the global status of nutrition. And that's why we are called the Global Nutrition Report. I'm trying to, oh, okay, this might take a minute, sorry. So today I'm going to be actually looking at the Nutrition for Growth Paris 2025 commitments and just giving you all a little bit of a summary. We will not have enough time to go through all the exciting information that we have gathered, and we will have a separate long deck that we will send you all to, and I'll have the QR code at the end of the presentation. But the essence of the Global Nutrition Report commitment tracking, registration and tracking started off in 2013 after the N4G's first N4G Summit that was held in the UK. And the process of making commitments may be, some of you may be very familiar with this, was pretty manual. And it was the commitments were registered and entered into an Excel spreadsheet and tracked on an annual basis by the Global Nutrition Report through what is called as a Nutrition for Growth tracker. And post Milan, which was the 2017 summit, there was a real call for having a robust framework that allows us to measure the progress in a more systematic fashion, in a more, and also collect the commitments in a more standardized and harmonized fashion. And that's where the Nutrition Accountability Framework was developed by the Global Nutrition Report. And that has been used in the Tokyo Summit as well as in the Paris Summit. And it is an extremely rigorous process of registering commitments, and it allows us to assess the commitment for smartness, which includes basically the specificity of the commitment, the ability for that commitment to measure its own progress, the achievability, the time-bound nature, as well as the relevance of those commitments. So I'm just going to give a quick review on the Paris commitments, which are now registered in the NAF. And what you see here are the total commitments that have been made as of the summer of 2025. We had commitment makers posting in and registering commitments after the summit as well. So we have 587 commitments and 178 commitment-making entities, and these could range from governments to development banks and institutions, philanthropies, as well as civil society. Now, the N4G Summit hosted by France had very specific categories from policy, enabling, impact, and financial. And what you see here are the number of commitments that were made in each of these categories. This has already been highlighted. One of the achievements, real achievements of the summit was the amount of resources that were raised under financial commitments. They look like they're not a lot, but $30.5 billion was committed under financial commitments last March. The other point that I really would like to highlight, and this is really amazing, is the kind of spread of commitment makers by country. And what you see on the left side of this slide are the number of commitments by the income category of the country. And you see that the lower middle income and lower income countries have really stepped up in making commitments. And I do want to also highlight that some of these countries actually did also make financial commitments. And on the right side, you can see in the map, there were a total of 82 countries that participated in the summit and actively engaged and made commitments. So how does this look like with respect to the different nutrition targets that we consider within the GNR as well as the N4G? And a lot of this has already been looked at by previous speakers, but I wanted to just highlight the fact that we have 6 global nutrition targets that go through 2030. And then we have, in addition to that, you have targets that are the diet-related NCD targets that the Global Nutrition Report also tracks. And this is to ensure that we're looking at malnutrition in all its forms. And what you see here is appropriately, you see stunting and wasting and anemia having substantial number of commitments. And these numbers are not going to add up to 587 because there are some commitments have multiple targets. But what is very important that I would like to note is since the point of the London summit, and even in fact, probably not so much in Tokyo, we didn't have the adult NCD target. So there is a rising awareness, not just in high-income countries, but in a lot of low and middle-income countries that there has to be emphasis placed on malnutrition in all its forms. And this is really reflected in the fact that you see increasing number of commitments being made around NCD targets. When we look at the commitments with respect to the N4G Paris theme itself, and you see that they kind of really nicely place out, obviously you have the most in nutrition, health, and social protection, but then you're followed by sustainable food systems and climate commitments, and resilience to crisis commitments, gender and equality, financing and accountability, and nutrition data research, monitoring, as well as artificial intelligence and innovation commitments. The key point here is many of these commitments, over 100 of them, have actually the term integration. And of course, we are all aware of the Nutrition Integration Compact that was launched in the summit, and you have about 87 signatories, and many of these are actually commitment makers. I don't have the exact number of commitments that were made in the summit by those signatories, but there will be an overlap there. So there has been a real substantial mobilization last March, and our role as the GNR is going to be to keep track of this. So in fact, many of you who might be commitment makers in this room might have received an email from us asking you to report on the progress made towards your commitment. And the progress reporting is going to go through the end of April. And what we are hoping to do is be able to track not just the Paris, but also the Tokyo commitments, which we've already had one progress tracking in the last year. So we invite everyone who are commitment makers to please submit the reports because it allows us to keep track of what's really going on and to what extent commitments have been achieved and where are the barriers for commitments to not being achieved. This always obviously will help future N4G summits in making better decisions, but also for commitment makers to make better decisions. So I'd like to thank you for listening to me. I hope I kept to my time, but this is the QR code. There is a lot of information on the Paris commitments that is on the website of the GNR, and you can get to it through this QR code. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ghosh, and for having shared with us this very clear and useful information. And don't forget to submit your report by the 30th of April. Now, to close this opening segment, and before moving on the roundtables, I will now turn to Dr. Joanne Raisin. She's the director of the Sun Movement, and she will present how Sun countries are moving from pledges to action, following up on their commitment at the N4G Paris Summit.
Thank you. I've lived well over half a century without music ever accompanying me anywhere, so thank you very much. Distinguished guests, colleagues and partners, thank you for having the Scaling Up Nutrition movement here today to address you. As all the speakers have noted, the world has changed significantly since we were all together in Paris last year, and the cuts to ODA stand to reverse the nutrition gains of the last decade if we don't find a way to act collectively. So we are therefore really appreciative of the work that France, the commendable work France is doing to really keep nutrition in focus and keep the momentum post-summit. And keeping the momentum on nutrition in today's world of declining aid matters greatly, as Anne's sobering opening showed, and it matters greatly to some 67 countries who make up 90% of the country commitments for N4G, and for whom I'm advocating today. This is because some countries are at the global center of malnutrition. 2/3 of the world's stunted children live there. 1/3 of the world's anemic women of reproductive age live there. And 1/3 of the world's overweight children live there. So behind these statistics are huge losses. Other speakers have talked about the gains that can be made from good investment. But when we look at continued underinvestment in the Sun countries, we can see underinvestment in nutrition costing over 16% of GDP for Asia and Africa. And not only did the Sun countries bear the greatest burden of malnutrition, over half of them are also fragile, which means they are highly vulnerable to the cuts in ODA, which are expected to cut nutrition spending by about 39%. And they also make up half the world's humanitarian beneficiaries, and humanitarian spending is facing a 9 billion cut. But even in the face of these enormous challenges, we can really see that the Sun countries have come together to try to make progress and build some resilience against these external factors. So let me bring a little bit of light to what I'm saying and talk about some of the progress over the last year. So in Latin America and the Caribbean, 1 year after Paris, we can see that all countries have national N4G roadmaps in place. Costa Rica and Honduras are advancing in strengthening climate integration into food systems. Guatemala, El Salvador, and Peru have the overweight and obesity national strategies, recognizing the shift in the malnutrition profile for that area. Bangladesh in Asia has established 3 multi-sectoral coordination N4G task force, and this is about building multi-sectoral information systems and tracking. And in Cambodia, we can see that they have already integrated food systems into their nationally determined contributions. And that's the minimum a country can do, needs to do, if it's going to access green climate funding for nutrition. In Africa, Ethiopia has integrated N4G commitments with a performance-based multi-sectoral governance structure, which brings in a wide variety of stakeholders, including UN, NGOs, etc. And Zambia has already drafted its stunting reduction strategy and reactivated local coordination structures for data collection. And we can really see countries trying to mobilize their own resources. Gambia's Nutrition Act in December 25, provides for a dedicated nutrition fund from government financing. And Côte d'Ivoire exceeded its national nutrition financing target following its May roundtable, led by the Vice President. And this helped secure 15% of funding from government for Côte d'Ivoire's multi-sectoral plan. We also see the progress Madagascar's made since N4G, integrating nutrition too in its nationally determined contributions and adopting a variety of national food fortification standards. So these examples are really positive, and they show the progress that's been made in just less than a year. And what's really important is that it shows how the N4G commitments are being anchored inside government structures, government planning, and government financing. But countries are also asking us to tell you about the challenges that they face to meet their commitments. So 80% of SUN's countries don't have the robust financing mechanisms that can mobilize, track, or safeguard funding. Half don't have information systems and data to show the results that can influence their own budget processes. And fragile countries face the biggest challenge with domestic financing, because their financing is only 5% of total funding in countries, and they are completely reliant on humanitarian aid. And that doesn't always improve nutrition. Only 13% of the humanitarian food sector aid went to nutrition sector. And while it's really important to be saving lives, it doesn't build the systems for frontline delivery capacity needed for health and nutrition services. The systems that are increasingly starved of development finance. And it is countries coming, the fragile states, and asking for stakeholders to get really serious about the nexus in fragile states. So as SUN, we'll continue to raise awareness of the challenges and needs, and we will continue to support the countries. And we'll be working towards building partnerships going beyond the ODA system to try and bring in more of the regional development banks, philanthropies from the South, and the private sector. And I think we're lucky in the room today to have a lot of the SUN country focal points and also government members. So I look forward to listening to them on the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Raisin. Thank you all for all your valuable contributions. We will now open the first roundtable, and we will keep talking about achievements and the progress since N4G. So this roundtable will be moderated by Patrick Bertrand, the Executive Director of Global Health Advocates, with whom UNICEF works very closely to advance innovative finances initiatives such as the soda tax and the Child Nutrition Fund. Patrick, the floor is yours.
Merci, and thank you. And I will speak a little bit in French, a little bit in English, and especially because we are lucky to have a French-speaking panel from Francophone Africa and West Africa in this roundtable. As Anne was saying, I'm Patrick Bertrand, I'm Executive Director of Global Health Advocates. Global Health Advocates, we are an organization, an advocacy organization that has been spent the past 18 years on our existence fighting health inequalities. And since the beginning, we have been also involved a lot in nutrition, and especially around malnutrition. Because as you know, how can you advocate for global health without talking about nutrition and talking about malnutrition? And it's important for us to also not work in silos and also to break a little bit the walls between people working on global health and people working on nutrition, which is quite a difficult task, I will say. And I will be very short on my introduction, and saying that even if, as all the speakers have said previously, the Nutrition for Growth Summit in Paris marked really a milestone in global nutrition, yet 1 year later, the landscape has shifted a lot. And mention again that people were saying, but we have, in addition to the geopolitical situation that we all know, we have an enormous decrease on the overseas development assistance in most of our calling donor countries, which is very, very, very concerning. We have also domestic resources mobilization that is increasing, constrained by debt. And the third thing that we are seeing as global health advocates is we are reliance on private sectors financing is growing. It's important, it's essential, but it's not universally applicable solutions. So tonight, we have distinguished panelists. We will go to the ground, as the Minister Karawa was saying, take the concrete things that are going on the ground, and we'll take stock. Are we sustaining, maintaining, or delivering on the commitment made in Paris 1 year ago? What progress have we made? So for that, I'm really, ladies and gentlemen, very honored to welcome our panelists today. I will welcome Son Excellence, I will speak in French first, Son Excellence, Madame Kaïté Sall, ministre de la Santé et de l'Hygiène de la République de Guinée. Merci, Madame Sall, de votre présence. Juste aussi pour vous dire que malheureusement, le docteur Modizé, qui est sur cette slide, malheureusement a un engagement de dernière minute. Et je crois qu'il y a un problème de transport, il ne peut pas être présent. Mais nous avons la chance et l'honneur d'avoir parmi nous le docteur Patricia Ngoran, qui est conseillère à la présidence de la République de Côte d'Ivoire. Juste pour aussi nous rappeler que la Côte d'Ivoire a été co-host de la conférence Nutrition for Growth à Paris l'année dernière. Merci, Mme Goran, de votre flexibilité. Nous avons aussi Mme Marietta Jagger. We have also Mrs. Marietta Jagger, Deputy Director for International Partnership of the European Commission, that are joining us. Thank you. And last but not least, Dr. Robert Sebag, Président d'Action contre la faim, nous rejoint. Thank you. Hello? Oui, it's okay. Sorry. I'll start with the same question for all of you, all you four. Same basic questions is, could you please share us how did you engage in the Nutrition for Growth Summit last year? including any commitments made by your institutions and how progress has been made towards delivering those commitments. And I will start by you, Minister.
Merci beaucoup. Je suis Madame Maïté Sall, ministre de la Santé et de l'Hygiène publique de la République de Guinée. Merci pour cette invitation et je suis ravie d'être parmi ces panélistes distingués ici qui représentent quand même une couche diversifiée d'acteurs dans le secteur nutritionnel. La Guinée a eu l'honneur de participer au sommet Nutrition for Growth et a eu aussi à prendre 8 différents engagements pendant le sommet. Il faut rappeler que le sommet a permis quand même de réaffirmer l'engagement de la République de Guinée à prioriser les activités de nutrition parce que nous avons fait face à des épidémies, notamment Ebola, Covid, et nous étions attelés à renforcer la sécurité sanitaire, chose qui a fait que les activités telles que ceux de la nutrition ont été négligées en quelque sorte pendant les années précédentes. Donc ce sommet nous a permis de réaffirmer notre engagement et de reprioriser la nutrition comme action concrète pour l'amélioration de l'état de santé. Pour aboutir à ces engagements, nous avons un comité de pilotage multisectoriel qui alimente le portail d'information des systèmes alimentaires et nutritionnels en République de Guinée. Donc ce comité de pilotage, il est ancré au plus haut sommet de l'État à travers la présidence du Premier ministre chef du gouvernement et qui est composé des membres sectoriels. Le ministère de la Santé y fait partie, le ministère de l'Agriculture, de l'Élevage, de l'Éducation nationale, des solidarités des femmes. Et donc nous nous sommes assurés que les engagements que nous avons pris étaient des engagements qui étaient en étroite ligne sur les différents indicateurs que nous traçons déjà au niveau de notre plan stratégique multisectoriel nutrition. Donc, ils sont catégorisés en 4 pans. Nous avons l'amélioration de la nutrition du nourrisson, donc à travers la promotion de l'allaitement exclusif jusqu'à 6 mois. Dans ce sens, nous avons élaboré un code de commercialisation des substituts de lait maternel. Ce code est effectivement au niveau du Parlement aujourd'hui en train d'être revu pour examen et adoption. Donc nous espérons qu'avec l'exclusivité accordée à l'allaitement jusqu'à 6 mois, nous pourrons quand même engager des réformes assez solides qui pourraient promouvoir l'allaitement exclusif. L'un des engagements que nous avons aussi pris, c'était de réduire le taux de malnutrition. Aujourd'hui, les statistiques nous révèlent qu'on est à 6,7% de malnutrition aiguë. Donc, nous avons pris l'engagement de le réduire à 5% à l'horizon 2028. Donc, dans ce sens, le gouvernement s'est engagé à offrir des intrants nutritionnels gratuitement dans les centres de santé, dans les postes de santé, dans les hôpitaux. Donc nous avons l'année passée fait un investissement de 6 millions de dollars sur budget national de développement pour pouvoir rendre disponibles ces intrants nutritionnels, les plans de Pinot et ce qu'on connaît déjà dans les centres de santé. Troisièmement, nous avons aussi pris un engagement sur la réduction du retard de croissance. Et dans ce sens, nous adoptons des stratégies pour élaborer des recettes locales. Compte tenu de la production locale dans la région, nous essayons pendant les consultations prénatales des femmes enceintes de les éduquer sur comment nourrir dès l'accouchement, dès les premiers 6 mois, leurs enfants à base déjà des produits locaux qui existent dans la région. Donc, ce qui permettait au fait de rationaliser les ressources. Donc, dernièrement, c'était un engagement, les catégories d'engagement, un engagement sur l'augmentation des financements domestiques. Et dans ce sens, la Guinée a élaboré un programme de développement qu'on appelle Simandou 2040, qui a 5 piliers principaux. Le premier pilier, c'est sur l'agriculture. Donc, il y a eu un engagement conséquent sur l'augmentation des budgets alloués pour augmenter la production agricole, qui en retour aujourd'hui sont utilisés en quelque sorte dans les cantines scolaires. Nous avons mis en place dans les 7 régions du pays des cantines scolaires qui sont gratuites, qui offrent donc la nutrition gratuitement aux enfants qui partent à l'école. L'un des piliers aussi de ce programme de développement est la santé. Et dans les réformes phares engagées au compte de la santé, nous avons la réduction du taux de malnutrition, d'où l'investissement de 6 millions de dollars qui a pu être fait l'an passé. Et cette année, nous comptons augmenter ce financement progressivement. Je vous remercie.
Merci Madame la Ministre. cet overview, comme on dit, très rapide des actions que vous menez en Guinée. Maintenant, je vais passer rapidement au Dr Ngoran. J'ai eu la chance de vous rencontrer juste avant Nutrition for Growth en Côte d'Ivoire et j'ai été très impressionné par votre dynamisme et tout le travail que vous avez mené, que vous meniez et que vous continuez de mener en Côte d'Ivoire. Donc, est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire comment vous vous êtes engagé et quels sont les engagements que vous avez pris?
Merci, Madame la Ministre. Je voudrais saluer les organisateurs et vous dire merci d'avoir associé la Côte d'Ivoire. Alors, je voudrais dire, peut-être rappeler que la Côte d'Ivoire a co-présidé le groupe consultatif avec la coordonnatrice du mouvement SUN. Je voudrais saluer l'honneur qui a été fait à la Côte d'Ivoire. Et à travers cette organisation, il nous a été donné d'élaborer la vision, tous les documents qui devaient soutenir le guide de formulation des engagements, mais aussi rappeler qu'il y avait 50 pays, et donc 5 pays africains. Donc il fallait s'assurer que je pouvais porter la voix de ces pays. Je devais défendre, parce que quand nous parlons de l'Afrique, il s'agit, comme je le dis souvent, depuis la première conférence internationale sur la nutrition qui dit on ne peut pas accepter, c'est-à-dire ce monde, avec toutes ces ressources voulues, humaines et tout ce que nous pouvons, financières, accepter le fléau de la malnutrition. Je crois que c'est inacceptable pour tout le monde. Et parti de ce principe, je pense qu'on a travaillé à côté de ces pays pour arriver à ces engagements. Je voudrais retenir de ces échanges, surtout, c'est la confiance qu'on a eue des pays, parce que je porte aussi la voix exécutive au sein du mouvement SUN de 19 pays africains au niveau du SUN, comme je le dis de manière africaine, francophone, SUN. Et pourquoi la Côte d'Ivoire? Avant de passer à nos engagements, nous devons aussi travailler avec ces pays. On a même eu une réunion à Abidjan avec 40 pays africains pour réfléchir sur ces engagements. Parce qu'on voulait des engagements ambitieux, j'allais dire audacieux, financiers, non financiers, pour mettre fin à la malnutrition, si possible, pousser les pays à comprendre qu'il faut aujourd'hui financer soi-même la nutrition. Regarde la grande crise qui arrive, c'était tout le débat, comment les pays vont arriver à prendre la nutrition comme une question de justice sociale, d'équité, et savoir que l'on ne peut pas tendre toujours la main pour régler un problème tel que la malnutrition dans son pays. Donc nous sommes arrivés à ces réunions, et pour arriver sur, peut-être vous faire court, j'allais dire pour arriver sur la Côte d'Ivoire. Alors je voudrais dire, la Côte d'Ivoire est avant tout un pays pionnier, si je peux le dire, depuis notre adhésion au mouvement SUN. En 2017, on a eu la médaille SUN, la récompense comme pays champion pour avoir réalisé le premier rassemblement du mouvement SUN dans un pays. Et dire que nous avons fait très vite, très tôt, dès notre adhésion, de la nutrition une priorité. Je dis bien une des priorités du gouvernement. C'est vraiment une des priorités. Et nous avons élaboré le plan national multisectoriel de nutrition avec toutes les parties prenantes. Et c'est surtout que nous devons retenir l'ancrage. L'ancrage a été placé à la présidence de la République sous l'autorité du vice-président de la République. Je salue tous les pays SUN qui sont là, mais pour dire en effet, il n'y a pas meilleur ancrage. Parfois quand j'entends, on convoque les ministres des Finances. Il y a une réunion bientôt, là, les ministres des Finances vont être convoqués. Ça ne sert à rien. Moi, je peux vous le dire. C'est l'ancrage qui change tout. Vous savez, la nutrition aujourd'hui étant la présidence, je ne souffre pas de cette mobilisation des ressources. Si le président a dit j'accepte, j'accepte. Pour le petit exemple, c'était l'anémie. Vous allez voir, on a pris un engagement dessus. Le président m'a dit, mais ça coûte combien, madame? Quand je lui ai dit le prix, il dit, mais pourquoi je n'ai pas vu ça dedans? Je ne veux plus que les femmes meurent en donnant la vie, parce que c'est le taux de mortalité en Côte d'Ivoire reste encore élevé. Et la première cause, c'est l'hémorragie de la délivrance. Donc, je ne veux pas de ça. Et il a dit, c'est pas ça que je ne peux pas financer. Vous voyez? Mais si la nutrition était plus bas, excusez-moi, madame la ministre, avant j'étais à la santé. Donc la santé fait son enveloppe. C'est déjà assez limité. Elle ne peut rien faire, elle va cadrer son financement. La nutrition n'aura pas grand-chose. Mais étant la présidente, j'avoue que ça ne se discute plus. Donc, à partir de ce principe, je voulais aussi dire en faisant de la nutrition une priorité nationale, surtout dans le financement. Je crois qu'on a été l'un des premiers pays à financer sur budget propre la nutrition. Mais au-delà de ça, nous avons conduit le plaidoyer qui a permis le plaidoyer. Le chef de l'État est le champion du suivi de l'agenda 2063 de l'Union africaine. Donc, il a conduit le plaidoyer pour faire de l'année 2022 l'année de la nutrition, pour que tous les États aient un regard sur la nutrition. Je profite pour dire que nous avons un centre d'excellence continental pour la lutte contre la faim et la malnutrition. Ce centre est désormais ouvert depuis 2024 à toutes les agences des Nations Unies pour travailler aux côtés de l'État pour réduire la question de la malnutrition. Et un prix, je l'annonce parce que c'est finalisé, vous allez le voir bientôt, on a mis en place, l'État de Côte d'Ivoire a mis en place un prix d'excellence pour le renforcement de la nutrition, de la sécurité alimentaire en Afrique. Le FIDA va héberger le fonds, c'est un capital de près de 10 milliards de francs CFA sur le budget de l'État. Et la marraine est connue aussi, c'est l'ancienne présidente de l'Éthiopie, dont les statuts seront bientôt publiés. C'est pour dire qu'on s'engage pleinement auprès de la nutrition. À ce titre, ou bien je m'arrête.
Oui, sinon on n'aura pas le temps. On n'aura pas le temps pour une deuxième série de questions. Merci.
Merci.
Merci, Anne, merci d'avoir insisté sur le fait que l'importance d'avoir le plus haut niveau politique engagé dans la lutte contre la malnutrition. Et c'est vraiment un exemple à suivre, comment faire que le président du pays soit impliqué. Now, I'm turning out to Mareta Jagger, Deputy Director from European Commission, just to give us just a short overview of how you've been engaged and what is your important commitment that you made.
Merci. Il faut quand même que quelqu'un parle anglais dans cette salle, non? Madame la ministre, Excellence, chers amis, chers collègues, I'm really pleased to be here, and I'll be very, very short because I was there in Paris. I had the pleasure to represent the European Commission and basically deliver on Team Europe. And first of all, I would like to thank France and all co-organizers for this event, because I believe that it's very important that it's here in the margin of the One Health Summit, because basically we are talking about nutrition, human, animal, environmental health, and basically it's all interconnected. So previous speakers explained the link with the health, and I would add also with the food system, agriculture, and climate. It's all integrated approach. It's all holistic approach that we need to basically follow in order to have a result. But let me go back to Paris. So I'm very proud to explain to you, or to report, that as a European Commission, we pledged in Paris 3.4 billion euros. And I'm even more proud, je suis très honorée, Madame la Ministre, to announce today that we have already committed 2.7 billion out of our pledge. That means that we are at exactly 79% or almost 80% of our commitment. Voilà, c'est quelque chose à dire. And I'm pretty sure that we will not only deliver on our pledge, but also exceed it, because from the previous pledges, we pledged 3.5 in London, and we delivered 4.3. The same in Tokyo, we exceeded. So hopefully also for the Paris pledge, we can exceed. But moreover, we are working very closely with our member states. So 7 member states additionally in Paris committed 3.1 billion. So as a Team Europe, it was a pledge of 6.5 billion. I still remember announcing it at the end of the ceremony, and I do believe that together with member states we'll deliver, and that will be in the 9th report. And also this will crown our nutrition action plan. But moreover, you know, everyone was talking about the crisis that it's coming. It's there, I would say. So let's not lose what we have built over the decades. We will probably face more decrease in aid, and I can proudly say that the EU is staying predictable and reliable partner. And basically what we need to bring in the occasion is the private sector, because the public sector, we will never have enough money altogether. So that's why the Paris Business Declaration that we are going to basically present is the right way, and we welcome and celebrate it. And it's in line with our global gateway to basically bring investments into nutrition as well. And dealing with financial instruments for many years, I would like to make the agribusiness basically becoming less risky, or at least the perception of the private business that the risk is too high should be something that we cross. And my last wish is for maybe next pledges and nutrition. We need to lower the transactional costs. So, I mean, for sure, I know how much you're working, and especially the UN, but, you know, common procurement, joint procurement can basically lower the costs and bring additional money for the kids and mothers that they need our help. And I'm really concluding with the word that I'm a huge fan of SAN, who I was in the leading group, and of course we will continue to support you as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thanks a lot for this great news that you are announcing, and we hope with the next multilateral financial framework that the EU will be able to do even more in the future. Last on that panel, Dr. Robert Sebag, président d'Action contre la faim. Juste si vous pouvez me dire un peu, nous donner votre point de vue sur votre engagement. Je sais que nous avons travaillé ensemble avec la société civile de façon très poussée autour de Nutrition for Growth. Et quel est votre point de vue?
Quand on s'appelle Action contre la faim, on ne peut que se réjouir. Il y a eu un sommet en 2025 à Paris. Il y a des commitments, il y a des promesses qui ont été faites. Il y a eu surtout une mobilisation au niveau des gouvernements, parce qu'ils ont tenu compte, vous l'avez dit, Madame la Ministre, vous l'avez dit à la fois sur la Guinée et sur la Côte d'Ivoire. Alors on verra fin avril, hein, puisque j'ai vu que fin avril, on aura des choses absolument concrètes. Mais politiquement, c'est important. C'est de remettre les problèmes nutritionnels, si vous voulez, au cœur des débats et au cœur du développement. Et puis, on sait que, voilà, on l'a intégré dans One Health. Ça me paraît extrêmement important. Il ne faut pas isoler les problèmes nutritionnels. Parce que ça, c'est pas le médecin infectiologue qui vous parle, qui peut dire que la santé ne joue pas un rôle extrêmement important. Mais je vais vous raconter quelque chose. Action contre la faim a été créée en 1979. Vous pourrez calculer mon âge, je suis un des membres fondateurs de cette association. Donc il y a 46 ans. Et il y a 46 ans, on disait, on rêvait. On voudrait un monde sans faim. F-A-I-M. 46 ans après, on a des colloques, on se pose des problèmes, on regarde un certain nombre de chiffres. Que s'est-il passé? Qu'avons-nous fait pendant ces 46 ans, Action contre la faim compris? Alors oui, on a réglé des crises. Je me souviens, moi-même, en Afghanistan, après l'invasion soviétique, en Éthiopie en 85, les Karamojans en 81 au nord de l'Ouganda, etc. Mais on a toujours, aujourd'hui, un certain nombre, et c'est un long chemin d'embûche, si vous voulez. C'est les conflits, de plus en plus de conflits. Donc on remet à chaque fois sur l'établi notre travail. C'est le changement climatique. On n'en parlait pas il y a 46 ans du changement climatique. Et on sait qu'il joue un rôle extrêmement important. La pauvreté, problèmes de pauvreté fondamentaux. Et puis bien sûr, les problèmes de genre, ils existent. Alors je sais que certains pays veulent nous faire supprimer absolument cette problématique. Mais la réalité, quand on est sur le terrain, c'est qu'elle existe. Alors il y a cette réalité de prise de conscience, de futurs colloques, de promesses. Et je remercie l'Union européenne parce qu'elle est là. Ça n'a pas été le cas de tout le monde. Et je veux dire, on est obligé de dire la vérité. On ne va pas avoir de langue de bois. Je pense que ça me paraît extrêmement important. C'est qu'on est en face d'énormes difficultés. Alors, je suis président d'Action contre la faim. Du jour au lendemain, on a eu une coupure de 30% du budget. Du jour au lendemain. Ça veut dire quoi? Ben, ça veut dire qu'on arrête des programmes. Ça veut dire que moi-même, j'ai dû aller à Madagascar pour supprimer 200 postes de jeunes malgaches et d'arrêter des programmes nutritionnels. Quand on sait que la nutrition dans le sud de Madagascar est un problème fondamental. Et puis la santé. Je veux dire, on est obligé d'avoir cette approche holistique. Hein, si vous voulez, quand je vois, on parle de la nutrition des enfants, elle est fondamentale des nouveau-nés. Et les mères, la nutrition des mères. Hein, on parle de l'allaitement maternel, mais si la mère n'est pas bien nourrie, quelle est la valeur du lait? Donc ça me paraît extrêmement important, il faut le prendre en compte. Quand vous avez des cas de le paludisme, quand vous avez les infections respiratoires, ça joue sur les problèmes de malnutrition. Donc je crois qu'il faut se dire un certain nombre de choses. Et je vais même rajouter, parce qu'on en parle peu souvent, quand on voit ces populations, si vous voulez, les problèmes de santé mentale, les problèmes de désœuvrement dans les populations migrantes, chez les personnes reculées, quand vous avez une mortalité extrêmement infantile, ça rejaillit sur les personnes. Donc tout ça, si vous voulez, c'est à prendre en compte. Donc bien sûr que je me réjouis, bien sûr que je suis content qu'au One Health, on intègre les problèmes de nutrition, que demain, il y a des grandes personnalités qui vont être là, qu'on va mettre à l'agenda du G7. Mais je me pose la question, le prochain Nutrition for Growth, c'est en 2030, ça devait être les États-Unis. Est-ce que les États-Unis vont maintenir l'organisation de ce colloque? Est-ce que les États-Unis vont aussi, si vous voulez, prendre part? Quand on regarde effectivement l'aide américaine, je remercie encore l'Europe, parce que nous-mêmes, Action contre la faim, grâce à l'Union européenne, on n'a pas mis la clé sous la porte. Donc, je crois que c'était important de dire un certain nombre de vérités. Oui, il y a des progrès. Oui, l'advocacy, si vous voulez, le plaidoyer, il est fondamental. On parle de problèmes politiques. Et vous l'avez dit, et le sommet de 2025, il a fait prendre conscience à l'état de pays et on a intégré les problèmes nutritionnels dans leur politique. Et ça, c'est important. Et les commitments précis, les résultats précis, on les verra fin avril. Simplement, il y a un autre agenda, c'est 2030, c'est les objectifs de développement durable, c'est le numéro 2, c'est la faim, il faudra en parler. La 3, la santé, la 6, l'eau, l'assainissement. Donc voilà, on a un défi extrêmement important, mais on regardera le numéro 2. Je vous remercie.
Merci, Dr. Sebag, pour ce fort plaidoyer. Je ne sais pas si on a le temps pour une deuxième question, comme on est assez en retard. Je ne sais pas, je vois les organisateurs, ou si on passe, parce que je sais qu'il y a des questions dans la salle également, et on a la chance d'avoir dans la salle des représentants d'autres pays qui peuvent aussi témoigner. Donc, on passe sur la salle. Donc, je crois qu'on avait Monsieur du Sénégal.
Oui, merci. Merci aux organisateurs. Très rapidement, revenir sur un point qui nous tient à cœur au Sénégal, c'est la question du financement. Donc, pour respecter notre engagement, ces derniers mois...
Pardon, si vous pouvez vous présenter avant, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, je suis le Dr Mbaye Sen, secrétaire exécutif du Conseil national de développement de la nutrition à la primature du Sénégal. C'est l'organisation qui gère tout ce qui est politique nationale en matière de nutrition et qui travaille de façon multisectorielle comme nos frères de la Côte d'Ivoire. Mais ici, ce n'est pas à la présidence, mais à la primature. Alors, c'est pour revenir sur la question du financement, pour dire que nous sommes sur l'élan de pouvoir respecter notre engagement, 70% de tout ce qui est, en tout cas, financement de la nutrition. Et actuellement, nous travaillons sur l'élaboration d'une politique, un plan stratégique de financement domestique de la nutrition. Et sur ce plan, nous avons identifié 4 types de leviers. Le premier, c'est la collectivité territoriale. La porte d'entrée au niveau communautaire aujourd'hui, c'est les collectivités territoriales et elles sont engagées à participer durablement à budgétiser la question de la nutrition. Le deuxième, c'est l'augmentation, l'engagement des entreprises et des industries à travers la responsabilité sociétale d'entreprise. Également, nous avons une grande mine d'or, tout ce qui est industrie agroalimentaire, mais également tout ce qui est, en tout cas, industrie extractive. Ils sont engagés et il y a en tout cas du concret actuellement. La semaine dernière, des entreprises nous ont accompagnés, nous ont fait des virements dans le compte bancaire du Conseil national de développement de la nutrition. Le troisième volet, l'État s'est engagé au cours des 5 prochaines années à augmenter chaque année de 500 millions de francs CFA, au moins, le budget de la nutrition. Et enfin, le quatrième levier, c'est toujours tout ce qui est genre et climat et intégré avec l'approche multisectorielle pour faire des full proposals, faire des actions recherche et pouvoir durablement renforcer ce financement. Et enfin, ça c'était au niveau domestique, nous organisons également tout ce qui est fondation, partenaires, ONG qui veulent travailler au niveau du pays pour innover, mettre un cutus qu'on va donner à tous les partenaires pour au moins les organiser, à moins qu'ils puissent travailler au mieux, que le ciblage des interventions dans les régions puisse donc répondre aux besoins nationaux. Je vous remercie, c'était ces quelques réflexions que je voudrais partager. Merci.
Merci pour ce témoignage du Sénégal. Nous avions un autre pays, je crois. Yann.
Merci beaucoup. Donc, moi, je suis coordonnateur national de l'Office national de nutrition à Madagascar, donc, qui est un organisme rattaché à la primature comme au Sénégal. Donc, nous, en ce moment, on bénéficie quand même d'un contexte où il y a eu un changement. Et la nutrition a été mise au cœur de ce process on va dire, de refondation. Ce qui veut dire qu'il y a eu des orientations gouvernementales par rapport à tout ce qui est action contre la malnutrition. Cette idée-là, en fait, je pense, vient du fait qu'effectivement, Madagascar a participé au N4G en 2025 et qu'actuellement, on a déjà un plan de suivi, une feuille de route des 6 engagements que Madagascar a pris l'année dernière et que on va dire cette feuille de route qu'on a au niveau de Madagascar rejoint un peu et intègre ces 6 engagements qu'on avait pris en 2025. Ce qu'on pourrait dire par rapport à cette nouvelle, on va dire, orientation de la nutrition, c'est comme au niveau de Sénégal, c'est la territorialisation, c'est-à-dire mettre les communes au centre des actions de lutte contre la malnutrition. À part les packs d'intervention sur la nutrition, il y a aussi un ancrage très particulier qu'on a mis sur l'économie circulaire, c'est-à-dire essayer d'utiliser au minimum pour cette première année de cette nouvelle feuille de route, au moins 30% des produits locaux en transformation et en développement de l'économie locale, régionale et communale pour créer des emplois, bien évidemment, pour contribuer à la nutrition, mais aussi pour développer la commercialisation de produits de production par rapport à ces produits locaux. Sinon, au niveau du mouvement SAN, nous, on a les plateformes qui sont très dynamiques avec l'UN, avec la société civile, avec le secteur privé. Et donc, en tant que poids focal de ce mouvement SAN, nous, on essaie de dynamiser ces activités-là. Très prochainement, justement, faire des thématiques par rapport à chaque plateforme gouvernementale, secteur privé, société civile et aussi recherche. Et bien évidemment, le 30 avril, c'est un deadline. On va tout faire pour que tout soit enregistré et répertorié là-dedans. Voilà. Sinon, un point, c'est par rapport au budget. Donc, on est en plein exercice de faire le marquage budgétaire, c'est-à-dire d'identifier dans tous les secteurs tout ce qui est budget au niveau des ministères, au niveau des secteurs, par rapport au budget sensible à la nutrition. Voilà principalement les grandes lignes que je voulais partager par rapport à ce sommet. Et merci de nous avoir invités. C'est un moment, je pense, après, avec les autres pays, on pourrait vraiment échanger et partager les expériences. Et merci encore. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Je crois qu'on a terminé avec la salle, mais si on a 1 minute peut-être de mots de conclusion pour chacun et chacune d'entre vous. Last concluding remarks. Ministère.
Merci beaucoup. Moi, c'est de remercier tous les organisateurs du sommet et de cet événement Nutrition for Growth, Scaling Up Nutrition et tous les acteurs vraiment qui conjuguent leurs efforts pour pouvoir faire le plaidoyer au compte de la nutrition, mais aussi pour promouvoir le financement domestique des activités de nutrition. Vu que c'est assez multisectoriel, il y a des défis énormes, mais je pense qu'avec l'engagement de tout un chacun, nous pourrons arriver à nos objectifs. Je vous remercie.
Madame Goran, Dr Goran.
Merci.
Désolé.
Je voudrais encore saluer dans la salle, je pense que j'ai entendu que était là l'envoyé spécial de la France. Où il est? Enfin, je le salue, je ne le vois pas, mais je le salue. Ah, Brieux, merci. Merci. Et la directrice du mouvement Seul, merci encore pour la confiance. Non, je voudrais conclure, mais quand même, je voudrais dire, c'est vrai que j'étais un peu embrouillée parce que je devais parler du N4G, je ne savais plus. Voilà. Maintenant, je parle un peu de la Côte d'Ivoire en 2 minutes. C'est-à-dire que quand je regarde tous les défis qu'il y a aujourd'hui, je pense que pour tous les pays, nous devons poser des actions durables. Parce que je pensais comme ça pour l'ancrage. Vous voyez, nous, on était à la primature, on est passé à la présidence, pour un plus haut niveau. Mais je veux dire, quand je regarde, ça engage un vice-président qui croit en la nutrition et qui l'a mis au cœur de son plan national de développement 2026-2030, au cœur du capital humain. Pour lui, il n'y a pas de capital humain s'il n'y a pas la nutrition au milieu. Et quand je regarde, on doit tout inscrire dans la durabilité, même dans la Côte d'Ivoire prospective 2040, même plus loin, même dans l'UA, dans le suivi, puisque nous avons le suivi de l'agenda 2063, la révision vient d'être faite. Et j'ai pu porter la voix en disant, mais vous faites tout ça, mais la nutrition excellence, c'est nous qui le portons. Et il a été d'accord, il a fait, au cours de l'UA, il a mentionné, les indicateurs vont mal en Afrique. Donc nous devons inscrire tout dans la durabilité, même le financement. Et ça, à ce titre, je voudrais terminer pour dire que nous devons penser un mécanisme durable de financement. C'est-à-dire, en plus que la Côte d'Ivoire a réalisé une table ronde pour ceux qui ont pu participer avec succès et aller au-delà des engagements de 15% qu'on a pris au sommet N4G, on a plus de 30% parce qu'on a compris que nous devons mettre la main à la pâte. Tu ne finances pas, tu n'auras pas grand-chose. Bien qu'il y a des partenaires qui nous soutiennent et que je vais dire encore merci, mais c'est le mécanisme de financement innovant, durable que nous devons trouver aujourd'hui. Sinon, on ne peut pas toujours compter sur un budget de l'État. Il faut que nous-mêmes, nous mettons en place ces mécanismes. Et donc, je voudrais terminer sur ce point pour dire encore merci. Merci de croire en la nutrition, tous ceux qui sont là, parce qu'on pense que nous croyons, et je suis sûre qu'on va y arriver, parce que je termine avec une phrase forte. Pourquoi nous avons considéré la nutrition dans sa dimension multisectorielle et que chacun l'a compris en Côte d'Ivoire, au plus haut niveau. On a eu un atelier présidentiel et j'étais très heureuse quand on a dit à la santé, excusez-moi Madame la Ministre, faites avec la nutrition, mutualisez les efforts. Aujourd'hui, dans la communauté, il y a des agents de développement, des agents communautaires. Pourquoi chacun veut voir son agent communautaire, l'agent social, l'agent de la santé? Ça coûte à qui? Ça coûte. Mutualisons. Et je voudrais terminer pour dire qu'il est important que nous mutualisons nos efforts, tant au niveau des pays qu'au niveau régional, continental, sinon c'est des gaspillages d'efforts et de ressources. Nous venons du One Health, ça me faisait penser c'est quoi la nutrition. Nous allons aux ODD, nous devons présenter des villages ODD. La nutrition, ce n'est que des ODD, ça nous permet d'atteindre 12 ODD précisément. Donc qu'est-ce que nous voulons? C'est d'aller aux ODD avec la nutrition. Je vous remercie.
Merci, Notre Goran. Madame Jagger, Mrs. Jagger.
Comme on dit en français, we need to walk the talk. So I invite all the donors and everyone who made the commitment to basically deliver. And what we need to do together is more local production, more food availability, and really reliable value chains, and as the previous speaker said, financial instruments that will deliver. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Robert?
Ben moi, il y a 2 mots. Il y a notre collègue du Sénégal qui a prononcé un mot en parlant des collectivités. Et puis madame aussi, sur Madagascar, vous avez parlé de recherche. Et donc nous, on base effectivement tous nos programmes sur la société civile. Ça me paraît extrêmement important de l'implication de la société civile, vous l'avez dit aussi, chère Madame de Côte d'Ivoire. Le deuxième point, c'est la recherche. Vous voyez, quand on parle nutrition, on dit pourquoi la recherche? Ben oui, c'est important la recherche, vous l'avez dit, parce qu'on peut utiliser des produits locaux. On a même fait des études, si vous voulez, on a fait une étude au Bangladesh où on a fait des groupes avec uniquement le plum peanut habituel, si vous voulez, sur les cas de nutrition, et puis d'autres plum peanut plus produits locaux et produits locaux seuls. Et on s'aperçoit qu'on a de très très bons résultats quand on alterne un peu les choses, donc on fait des économies et culturellement c'est mieux accepté par les populations. Et puis pour Madame de Madagascar, j'ai eu l'honneur il y a quelques semaines, votre président de la République était de passage à Paris, et j'ai eu la chance de pouvoir le rencontrer, et j'ai senti quelqu'un effectivement extrêmement impliqué. Et comme je revenais de Madagascar, je lui parlais de la région où Action contre la faim travaille dans le sud du pays. Il est originaire de cette région. Et il sait les problèmes, il était bien lucide sur les problèmes nutritionnels. Ben, j'ai trouvé quelqu'un qui était à l'écoute et qui avait compris, si vous voulez, pour son pays, les problèmes nutritionnels, bien sûr, liés à la santé. Puis vous avez parlé, madame, de mutualisation, vous avez raison. On ne peut pas mettre la santé d'un côté, le social de l'autre, le genre de l'autre côté. Non, tout est lié avec la nutrition. En tous les cas, merci de nous avoir conviés. Et moi, je suis ravi que la nutrition revienne en tête d'un certain nombre d'agendas sur le développement.
Merci, Robert. Thank you, Robert. I think you made a very, very good summary of all the discussion. I've done all my work, basically. But my next point is that we have some very positive and very good commitment and good presentation today, but we need to. The next essential step for us is to ensure that investment is strategically directed towards proven high-impact interventions and towards comprehensive prevention and treatment approach. That's very important, while continuing to integrate nutrition across sectors. And my last point is that, as you said, this One Health Summit is labellisé G7 France, and we hope that the G7 in France and President Macron will continue, as Minister Carrois was saying at the beginning, to be the champion in nutrition and to push all our G7 leaders to move and to do better. Thanks a lot. And thank you for all our speakers.
Merci beaucoup Bertrand et merci chers intervenants pour ce partage de bonnes pratiques, à commencer par celle de tenir ses engagements. Before we move on to the second roundtable, and we are really running out of time, I would like just us to take a moment to watch a video prepared by the Sun Civil Society Network. Youth and civil society representatives from some countries share their perspective on N4G progress and what progress looks like 1 year after the summit. La régie.
Around the world, the conditions for malnutrition are getting worse. Conflicts are spreading, climate shocks are intensifying, aid budgets are shrinking, and the most vulnerable communities are paying the highest price.
It was against this backdrop that 1 year ago in Paris, young people and civil society came to the Nutrition for Growth Summit with one urgent message.
The most vulnerable cannot be forgotten, and their right to healthy food must remain a priority.
Together we stood up, 2 calls to action, 1 movement. And today, we report back.
In the youth call to action, children and young people said, include us, resource us, trust us to lead, not as tokens, but as real partners.
And the Civil Society Declaration said, we will hold commitment makers to account on financing, food systems, and the right to nutrition.
Both calls share the same conviction. Accountability starts in communities.
Nutrition Dialogue Initiative gave us a shared approach, young people and civil society, facilitating real conversations, elevating community voices to every level for decision making.
In the 12 months since Paris, some civil society alliances and young people have been busy carrying forward the legacy of these powerful declarations at N4G Paris.
En el Perú, decidimos no esperar reportes oficiales. Desde la sociedad civil, creamos un observatorio basado en datos públicos para dar seguimiento a los compromisos en sistemas alimentarios. La evidencia nos permitió visibilizar brechas enormes, pero también oportunidades.
In Nigeria, we have trained over 150 youth advocates across the 6 geopolitical zones of the country, and we've supported them to be able to convene nutrition dialogues. Together, we've been able to convene more than 67 nutrition dialogues in most vulnerable communities, including adolescent girls and people with disabilities. For many of those we listened to, it was the first time they had been given a platform to shape decisions affecting their access to healthy diet, and we've leveraged the outcome of this dialogue to engage policymakers and key government stakeholders to kind of inform policy priorities and shape government action to improve nutrition. This is what true accountability looks like at the community level.
In 2025, in Zimbabwe, we brought together parliamentarians, government officials, and the media in the same room, and it worked. Currently, our government is working on an existing funding mechanism, the Child Nutrition Fund, to increase investments in nutrition. This is what happens when civil society builds evidence and brings the right people in the room.
En RDC, des jeunes se sont engagés auprès de communautés du Sud Kivu, où les conflits et l'insécurité ont rendu l'accès à une alimentation saine et suffisante encore plus difficile. Nous avons rencontré des jeunes et des élèves en milieu scolaire, ainsi que de jeunes mères, afin de partager leurs préoccupations en matière d'alimentation saine. Et nous avons identifié les idées reçues sur la nutrition, en y répondant par des informations précises provenant de jeunes de leur propre communauté et en qui ils pouvaient avoir confiance. Alors que tant d'enfants et de jeunes à travers le monde grandissent dans des contextes de conflit, ces dialogues constituent un canal essentiel pour garantir que leur voix ne soit pas oubliée par les décideurs.
Le sommet N4G a été une occasion unique pour Madagascar de renforcer son engagement envers la nutrition.
Les parlementaires gardent espoir face aux efforts annoncés par le gouvernement, car les actions entreprises aujourd'hui, impliquant plusieurs ministères, accordent une attention particulière à la lutte contre la malnutrition, devenue une priorité suite aux engagements pris par l'État malagasy.
At the N4G, the Sun Civil Society Network made its commitments. By 2028, we have collectively committed to delivering the following.
At least 12 peer learning exchanges between civil society alliances.
20 young people equipped to lead 300 community dialogues across 10 countries.
And civil society in 15 countries supported to hold the private sector to account on nutrition.
Because accountability has to start with us.
Nous sommes reconnaissants au ministère français de l'Europe et des Affaires étrangères dont le soutien rend possible une belle ambition.
One year on, we did not go home and wait. We went home and worked.
Young people and civil society tracking every promise, mapping every gap, making sure what we say in Paris is felt where it matters most.
Governments, donors, UN agencies, private sector, civil society, let's honor your commitments. Create the space, sustain the investment.
Young people and civil society works together, the change becomes unstoppable.
Okay, so now we will move on to the second roundtable, which will focus on from commitment to accountability. And to introduce our panelists, I will now give the floor to Greg. Please, Greg, come. Greg is the Executive Director of ATNi, Access to Nutrition Initiative, and will be moderating this second panel. Thank you. And you have to make short. Sorry.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we're very grateful at Access to Nutrition Initiative, my organization, to co-host this event with the French government and to speak about a topic which is critical for the future of ensuring access to affordable, healthy foods for all, and that is shaping nutrition economies, leveraging development finance, business, and partnerships. And I can see you're all leaning off of your chairs. What is a nutrition economy? I'm so glad you asked. What we want to do is explain how the declaration that came out from the Nutrition for Growth last year, called the Paris Declaration on Business and Nutrition, referred to markets which had guardrails and which had incentives that ensure that in the future we have affordable, healthy foods for all. I'll introduce the panel in a moment. We are running up against the clock. I think, as we say in English, time flies when you're having fun, which I guess would be something like le temps passe très vite quand on s'amuse, or something like that. But so we'll move through quickly. But just to set up the discussion, what did the Paris Declaration on Business and Nutrition actually call for? Well, it was developed by many different people, many different organizations from across different sectors. It wasn't just asking the private sector or just the government what needs to be done. It was reaching across the investment sector, the private sector, business and enterprise sector. It looked at governments and asked the governments what needs to be done, and civil society and international organizations as well. And in summary, it's calling for coordinated action, and that can sound like a platitude, but what it's really calling for is something that hasn't been done yet. Firstly, it's envisioning a system in which governments stop subsidizing to the tune of billions of dollars unhealthy crops or unhealthy foods that end up as unhealthy food products on our plates, and start to tax the least healthy foods. A system where investors stop considering only capital returns, but really take environment, social, and governance investing seriously and add nutrition into their investment portfolio. A system when development finance institutions always, not sometimes, but always include nutrition in their food investments. And currently that's not the case. There are many investments being done by DFIs where only livelihoods is looked at as a outcome, and we need nutrition outcomes to be added. A system in which civil society and international organizations actually can come together and agree what should the principles of engagement be when we're dealing with the private sector. And then finally, for the private sector themselves, we want a system where accountability is taken very seriously and they deliver on meaningful commitments and are held accountable to those commitments. So let's dive in with that context, and I'd like to introduce now the panel. I'd like to start with asking Dr. Justin Vasse, who is the Director General of the Paris Peace Forum, to take the stage. Secondly, I would like to ask Ms. Faustine Lescan, the Deputy Director of Nutriset, which is a French nutrition company, to come to the stage. Thirdly, I'd like to ask Mr. Simon Winter, Vice President of Reimagining Humanitarian Nutrition from the Rockefeller Foundation, to come. And finally, Mr. Aimé Guizera, the Global Coordinator for the Scaling Up Nutrition Business Network. Very good. So I'd like to start to talk about money and resources. And Rockefeller Foundation, I think, would be a good place to start with this question. First question is to you, Simon. I understand you're developing next-generation integrated models which deliver more resilient food, new food products in humanitarian contexts. Could you explain what exactly Rockefeller is doing to strengthen local food systems, government capacity, as well as local enterprises in delivering these foods?
Thanks very much. Great to be with you all this evening. At the Rockefeller Foundation, what we've seen work best, and I'm going to focus really on the financing piece of this, is integrated financing approaches, including the use of blended finance tools. For example, when we use philanthropic or concessional capital from a foundation perspective, we can do things like undertaking initial fact gathering around specific challenges and opportunities. We can help design programs, and we can absorb early risk. These small steps from a philanthropic perspective are quite difficult for more official organizations to take, but by doing that, we can crowd in investors from multilateral perspectives as well as the private sector to support nutritious, regenerative and local food production where markets are thin, volatile, or fragile. Equally important is patient capital for local enterprises, especially food aggregators who can connect local food producers, smallholder farmers, and other community organizations into local institutional markets. In fragile contexts in particular, which is the initiative that I'm now heading up at Rockefeller, we see that local SMEs are essential to food and nutrition resilience, and yet they're often the least served by traditional financial institutions. Longer-term, risk-tolerant capital can help to stabilize local supply chains and support smallholder farmers to supply into those supply chains in a resilient way. For example, we're currently supporting a social enterprise in Haiti called Accesso, which aggregates food from local farmers, and it supplies into school meal programs, supplies hospitals, local grocery stores, and other institutional buyers, helping hard-to-reach farmers and producers in a highly vulnerable setting access the value chain. So when World Food Programme or World Central Kitchen need to quickly purchase and deploy food amidst a violence outbreak or a flood or other form of emergency, they can then leverage Accesso to source through those local value chains and make sure that, for example, children in schools are still fed with a healthy meal every day. But companies like Accesso operate at a relatively small scale. They need capital to expand their businesses, and they need debt financing to make forward commitments to farmers so they can plan for the future in this highly volatile setting. We know then that when they can do that, and farmers can have forward commitments to source their production, the farmers are more likely to invest in transitions to regenerative practices, for example, and reduce their reliance on imported fertilizers and other chemical inputs. This approach builds resilience on the farms, in the local markets, and to the changing climate in local value chains. And this is particularly important right now in the time of high fertilizer prices. With increasing risks, resilience investing needs to go further. In our new program, we're supporting Accesso to work with Summit's Education, a local schools network, the Haiti Food Systems Alliance, which is a network of local SMEs and civil society organizations, and other actors to build what we're calling resilience hubs. And these resilience hubs will be located at schools in strategically targeted locations that can then ensure whole communities can be fed during crises, not only children in schools. In order to do that, it's not only about mobilizing blended finance and catalytic finance. We need to take a systemic, what we call a systemic financing approach, which can leverage the catalytic financing that a foundation can provide and other foundations like Kellogg Foundation to then attract scale-up financing from the likes of the Inter-American Development Bank and other multilateral organizations, as well as incentivizing packages of financing from commercial players like local banks and insurance companies. And then more broadly, we need to look at, and this came up in the previous panel, other innovative financing mechanisms like the use of debt swaps and other ways of tapping into national budgets without increasing the debt burden in the current period. So taking these kind of holistic, integrated, systemic approaches, we can support then local food systems and local actors to produce the nutritious foods that children and other members of the communities rely on, and at the same time support local SMEs to stabilize and grow their businesses.
Great. Thank you so much, Simon, especially for highlighting how philanthropic funding, government funding, private funding from banks, for example, can be blended together to actually show real results for affordable foods for children, as an example. I'd like to turn our attention to accountability, transparency, and how do we ensure that businesses are being held to account, but also incentivized. So, Justin, we worked closely with your organization, and your organization was very instrumental in the Paris Declaration on business and nutrition. Could you explain how we got to that declaration and what your organization does to foster transparency and accountability among the private sector?
Thank you, Greg. So yes, I would say the main asset for the Paris Peace Forum was that it was pretty new to the field. So unlike your organization or GAIN, with which we worked very, very closely, the forum had, let's say, the benefit of innocence, I would say, and we had started working on nutrition just a couple of years before, and we didn't know much about the field, and so we were able to bring a new perspective. And what we were struck by was how low the private sector contribution remained at that point to nutrition objectives, in spite of the fact that it's the private sector that produces and puts on the shelves the overwhelming majority of the food that we consume. So they process it, they deliver it, etc. And they hold the enormous capacities in production, innovation, logistics, and distribution. And so we were struck by the discrepancy of the situation. On the one hand, the role of the private sector, the overwhelming role of the private sector, and on the other hand, principles of engagement that were very restrictive. They were there for a reason. We all know what the origin of the reason was, etc. There's a history behind that, so we didn't ignore that at all. But we thought it was maybe time to give a fresh look to the role that the private sector could have, and our starting conviction was that companies could play a better role and be more part of the solution, and that the first step was to rebuild dialogue and trust. And so what we did, with support from many of you, the organizations that were in the field before, was a full year of neutral, structured, and inclusive dialogue over the course of 2024-2025, alongside GAIN and ATNi. We convened a genuine multi-stakeholder process, a genuine multi-actor process. Without having companies have the dominant voice, but without them being sidelined or marginalized in the discussion. So we brought together government, businesses, associations, investors, international organizations in a transparent and iterative dialogue, and that process culminated in the Paris Declaration of Business and Nutrition 2030, which gathers dozens of organizations around a shared vision. The core convictions we had were three of them: that individual voluntary commitments are not sufficient. However well-intentioned are some of the companies, what we need is an entire nutrition economy reformed. No single actor can do that alone. The second conviction we had was that a systemic approach was required, engaging private actors across the whole value chain, from investment upstream to processors, retailers, and consumers downstream. And third, we couldn't do it in 1 year or 2 years. We needed a more transparent multi-actor mechanism to sustain dialogue over a number of years. And so the end result, many of you know it, the declaration calls on several actors. It calls, of course, on businesses. Smart commitments and integration into ESG frameworks are, of course, the starting point that existed before, but they're not enough. The deeper goal is to embed nutrition in the core business models of these companies, reformulating products, shifting portfolio strategies, and making healthy options affordable and accessible. So making nutrition a business imperative, not a reporting exercise. But there were also prescriptions for governments. And for governments, we asked to create a level playing field, because businesses will not invest in healthier nutrition outcomes and products if the rules of the market continue to reward the opposite. And that's what you mentioned earlier. So regulation and incentives must align, and government has a big role to play in fine-tuning these regulations. For investors as well, we called for nutrition to be made financially appealing material and to appear in the investment criteria. And lastly, for civil society and international organizations, we called on them to align on private sector engagement frameworks. We need common rules across the continents for the private sector to engage. And so at the end of the day, we remain, the Paris Peace Forum remains committed to that dialogue as a neutral and open platform. Many of the hardest conversations, to be honest, are still before us, are still ahead. Marketing to children, labeling, I guess it's pronounced, product reformulation is a really important one, standardization of nutrition profiling scores. We just a few days ago, we had Savantia, the company, in a discussion in a breakfast that the Paris Peace Forum was having, and the head of ESG was telling us it's incredible that in Australia, for example, we would have the best nutrition score, and in France we would have the lowest one for the same product. And so the streamlining and better alignment of profiling scores is really important, especially for those companies that are the largest and that sell on different countries and different continents. Lobbying practices as well. So PPF's role is not to adjudicate there, but to make the dialogue happen. And we'll have our next edition of the forum in Paris on November 11 and 12. And many of you know that was a previous panel in the afternoon that nutrition is a central pillar of another initiative that we push, which is the Child Priority Framework, where we push to prioritize expense in a dwindling, in a landscape of dwindling resources, whether ODA or concessional resources, to prioritize expenses for children. And so we're developing this in parallel to the nutrition, but the PPF 9, so the 9th edition of the forum, where you are all invited, will be an opportunity to discuss again the business engagement for nutrition.
Merci, Justin, and thank you for pointing out how we're only at the beginning, and hopefully what we've been able to do working together as a community is lay the groundworks for an even more successful nutrition for growth in the future, where we can really mobilize private sector. And in Shabani's presentation, when you saw several of those commitments, please do look, because many of them are coming from investors. There was a whole new set of nutrition commitments from investors, institutional investors, as well as private sector. But we need more. It was far too little. So thank you for pointing that out. I'd like to move to the private sector now. So, Faustine, you're running a French global company based in France, Nutriset, and you made a commitment to serve at least 1.5 million new individuals with nutritious foods in 2027. Could you explain how Nutriset is doing on that commitment, and also what are you doing to improve local supply chains, and how does innovative finance work in this? And feel free to respond in French if you prefer. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for having us today, and I will try to do it in English. So yeah, indeed, after 40 years now that we have been working with NGOs and UN agencies, we are very, very glad to work directly now with government, and this commitment of 1.5 million is via the social actors, so via the governments. So yeah, we are glad to support governments, and we have a few in the room that we have been working with, Madagascar, Côte d'Ivoire, those governments that decided to put nutrition in the heart of their health system, because as has been said, it is a pillar for good development of children. And for a very long time, we have been, for 40 years, we have been developing producing, but we always have been talking about nutritional solution, and it's really where, with government, we can bring all of that. Of course, in the nutritional solution, you have the product, and we can develop global plum peanut, as it has been said, but we can also develop specific recipe to fit with local habits or to use local raw materials. But we are also working about the logistic. We are working, for example, in Benin, we are training the health agents to be able to use the product, to present the product to the mother, to the children. We are also working on the value raw material chain. So it's a global approach that we can have all by ourselves or with partners that we have been acquiring over the last 40 years. So it's a new way of working directly with government that is really passionate. So yeah, we need the support. We can see governments that are really engaged at president level or at prime minister. And but as it has been said before, yes, we need the donors, we need the financing, and to find long-term financing, because if we are talking about nutrition system, it's development of children, you will see the result in 5-10 years. So we really need to focus on long-term commitment and engagement from the donors. It's been 30 years that we developed Plumpynet, and we're working on treatment of malnutrition. If we go about prevention, that's a whole new way of working with the different actors that we need to embrace and to focus to reach our common goal. Yeah, you've been talking about local supply. Yes, we are based in France, but we are also based in 10 countries because producing locally, it's in our DNA. For 20 years now, we have been setting up production as close as possible to the needs. So we are based in different countries, but for example, in northern Nigeria, where the needs are present, really raising. And so we are supporting all those 10 partners with transfer of expertise, of know-how, of research, of technical support, of every day to ensure that product that is produced in northern Nigeria or in France is exactly the same, with the same quality, but with the plus of local production is, as I was saying, we can use as much as we can raw material, and so we have start working also on all this agricultural work that is even longer term work. And when we talk about Nigeria, for example, we have been working with local agriculture so that we can, and international researchers, so that we can have a local peanuts that fits with nutritional specification, but that is able also to being produced in those area with less water instead of importing it from North or South America or in India. So it's a new field of working as well. So this network is working also with their own government, and it's a real support. And we hope, and we are working for it. We work to make it a real support for government sovereignty and to work on the nutritional autonomy of these countries.
Thank you very much. And you were saying before, when we were speaking, that governments, if you take them in aggregate, they're one of the main purchasers now, or procurement agencies, along with WFP. Is that a good thing, that you're seeing more and more purchase directly from governments?
Yes, definitely. Definitely, the UN agencies are still very present, but governments are raising. We can see more and more engagement from government directly because the engagement of the government, and because also there are some new financing tools. We have been talking about the CNF, that is very important, so that when governments invest with their own budget on nutrition, there is this matching fund coordinated by UNICEF that can match the product that will be raised, so we double the impact. So this is the type of financing innovative that are very important for countries to be supported, and important, yeah, for local producers, so that they can see the impact of being locally and present through the government and through those financial mechanisms, so that we can demultiply the impact. So we truly believe that private sector can have both this impact. I mean, we most of the time see private sector as private finance, but I truly believe that private sector can bring something else. They have competencies, they have innovation, they have assets that they can put in the service of the fight against malnutrition.
Great, thank you for your work, very important work. Amy, you're representing, in many ways, the small and medium enterprises from the Global South through the Sun Business Network. If, let's say, we don't get governments, taxing unhealthy foods, and the subsidies continue to go to the wrong areas, and there's not a lot of regulation, do businesses still have agency to course correct and be a healthier food company? What's your perspective on that?
I'm afraid if I'm going to say it wrong, they are going to kill me. Because these are profit-oriented businesses we are talking about. And to your question, my answer is yes. And it's already happening because not all the governments are performing at the same level. So there are those businesses still struggling, like MSMEs. And the good thing about speaking last year on a panel of experts like the panel today is that sometimes you steal their ideas. And I'm happy because they touched on the importance of MSMEs. From what Simon said, a business supported by Rockefeller, from what Dr. Justin talked about, regulation versus businesses' working environment, and from what Faustine talked about on supply chain. So they can still do the same. And these businesses we are talking about, they are mostly ranging from Nippon Trader from Madagascar, the ones I'm representing on Sun Business Network, poultry producer in Laos, an aggregator in Honduras, a processor, food processor in Pakistan, and a vegetable retailer in Kenya. So they range from all the value chains and also all the segments of the value chain. So it's mostly, when you look at the commitment, the reason why I'm seated here today is because they are committed. Either the government wants it or not, the first thing that drives them is the profit, is to grow, is to be bigger, from micro moving to small, to moving to medium, to moving to large enterprises, and later in 5 years become like the size of Nutriset. They have, these goals and strategies they put in place. So those commitments, some of them, if you ask, I think I've seen Francine from Chamba Center, we have business that committed millions and millions of dollars under the Zero Hunger private sector pledge. They are still committing also different resources to improve the quality, to improve the supply of nutritious food to the communities. We are talking about schools. So the role is critical for them. But also if you look at the government, government is, as Dr. Justin said, it's more of an enabler. When you ask me what is, the role of the government by supporting the businesses, I say it's an enabler. You set the policies, you also make sure that these policies are operated in a safe environment for the business to grow. That is first. And also other stakeholders like the civil society, it's more so of facilitator, like NGOs, like GAIN, like ATNi, Care International, SNV, all, I can name all the business, all the civil society and international organizations that can support businesses. So you look at them as facilitators and accelerators in this sector because they are the ones helping these businesses to achieve their impact. And when it comes to financials, this is the question that I always tell people that whenever you have a chat with a business, the first challenge they will ask you is, they will tell you, what are you bringing to me in terms of finance? So access to finance is critical. And most of the times you look at it in terms of giving them money for free, like grant. No, they don't need that. Of course, if you say, I'm coming with grant, they're going to say, yes, come. But they are flexible. If you say, I have 5,000, we have experiences under Sun Business Network. If you go with 5,000, they are going to change their business plan directly because they want free money. And that is not right. We should not be doing that. So whenever I happen to speak with the country coordinators, I tell them, just being the mindset of, get them to the banks, link them to microfinances, because we are talking about businesses that are in need of $200 in terms of loan or credit. They don't need 100,000. So just a small one to continue operating for raw material. So the businesses, yes, they are committed and they can still perform, but they need the government as an enabler. They need the civil society international organizations as facilitators and aggregators. And they need financials to support them to achieve their targets. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. That's excellent, and I know we are at time, unfortunately, so that was a good way, I think, to conclude it, because you said, yes, the businesses can make a positive move in the direction of being a healthier food company, but we need government, we need civil society, we need continued support from the whole sector, and we've heard from yourself, we've heard from Rockefeller and the role of philanthropic funding, blended with government and private funding. We've heard from a company in the global north, which is serving on behalf of the global south and delivering more nutritious foods. And we've heard from the role of civil society in bringing more transparency, more accountability, and building among all of us nutrition economies, because there's a job for everyone in this. And so maybe if anybody had any burning questions or comments, we wanted to go to you, but we ran out of time. There is a reception afterwards, so please come up and talk to us. Merci beaucoup. Thank you.
I'm lost in my papers. We still have two guests. So, excuse me, somebody put a mess in there. Okay, it's not here. Hop, hop, hop. Here it is. So, thank you all for this second roundtable, and there was so much to say, and thank you for having been so brief. But as Greg mentioned, we can have discussion around a glass of something and and talk about private funding and political engagement. So to continue our event, I will now give the floor to Mrs. Hamina Janhagir, Global Advisor for Health and Nutrition at the Khan Foundation, who will take the floor to announce a new commitment 1 year after the summit. Please.
Thank you so much, and I'm honored to stand among such a diverse and dedicated group of leaders committed to global nutrition. So on behalf of the Khan Development Network, I take this opportunity to recognize the vision and efforts of all of you who are saving millions of lives and preventing millions more from suffering the effects of malnutrition. So, as we are running out of time, I'll be just brief in terms of what we have committed and where we are right now. Our Khan Development Network operates in one of in the world's most climate-impacted regions. And in 2025 in Paris, the Khan Development Network joined world leaders, development partners, and civil society organizations at the Nutrition for Growth Summit to accelerate action and mobilize financing for nutrition. And as part of its long-standing commitment to addressing malnutrition through integrated multi-sectoral approaches, His Highness the Aga Khan committed $45 million last year to nutrition. And as of today, these funds have already been dispersed and are being used to save lives and prevent malnutrition among children. As we stand in 2026, and we have talked about how the conflict and geopolitical situation is evolving, His Highness the Aga Khan has now committed $100 million over the next 5 years to combat malnutrition, joining global philanthropists, governments, and development partners in solidarity with 11.5 Edge of Life campaign, which aims to save over 35 million children from preventable hunger and malnutrition. The commitment marks a significant expansion of the Khan development work in Africa on food systems and nutrition, and also expanding the flagship program of Khan Development Network, the Central Area Stunting Initiative. I talked about it briefly in the previous panel, and which has shown us remarkable results in reducing child stunting and wasting. So this program is going to expand now more in geographies like in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Tajikistan, and Syria. I would just like to share His Highness statement, recent statement on malnutrition, which is very important for us. In a recent statement, he said, "Malnutrition remains one of the greatest barriers to human development, undermining the health, potential, and dignity of millions of children and their families. Addressing this challenge requires sustained commitment and collective action across sectors and societies. I'm honored to join partners around the world in supporting efforts to ensure that every child has the opportunity to grow, thrive, and contribute to their communities." Thank you very much.
So as we approach to the end of our event, it's my pleasure to introduce our final speaker, Professor Hannas Al-Nabulsi. Please come. He's the chairperson of the UN Committee on World Food Security and he will deliver the closing remarks of this session. Professor.
Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I would like to thank all the speakers for this rich and forward-looking discussion. It's an honor to be here with you in my capacity as a chairperson of the Committee on World Food Security. We are living in a world that is rapidly evolving, often in ways that challenge our ability to ensure food security and nutrition for all. Conflicts, climate change, economic instability, and other crises are intensifying, pushing millions to brink of hunger and malnutrition. Furthermore, we are witnessing how geopolitical disruptions affect energy markets with an inherent effect on food security and nutrition. Today's exchange has reaffirmed a central message. Nutrition is the heart of the One Health agenda, linking human, animal, environment health and underpinning food security, resilience, and sustainable development. 1 year after Nutrition for Growth Summit in Paris, we find ourselves at a critical juncture. The unprecedented commitments made, both financial and political, have created real momentum. But momentum alone is not enough. What matters now is to move to action from commitments to implementation. As we have heard today, progress has begun, but gaps still remain. We must accelerate efforts to integrate nutrition, food security, and the right to adequate food across national policies, sectors, and systems, and ensure that commitments translated into tangible outcomes for people and for the planet, leaving no one behind. Let me highlight 3 key reflections moving forward. Firstly, we must sustain and strengthen collective action. Nutrition like One Health requires a truly multi-sectorial and multi-stakeholder approach. Governments, international organizations, civil society, the private sector, foundations, and research institutions all have their role to play. Second, we must connect and align our efforts. The N4G Summit was not an endpoint, it was a milestone. Its commitment must be embedded into broader framework, including to support food systems transformation and overall achievement of the 2030 Agenda and beyond. Third, we must advance integrated approach to health, food systems, climate change, and environmental sustainability. The Committee on World Food Security has a key role to play in supporting these efforts with its 126 member states, alongside civil society, the private sector, indigenous people, farmer organizations, philanthropic institutions, research bodies, financial institutions, and UN agencies. CFS is not just a platform for discussion, it is a space for action where governments and stakeholders come together to develop and implement policy guidance grounded into science and evidence. Some of the key CFS policy guidance, such as voluntary guidance on food systems and nutrition, and the voluntary guidance to support progressive realization of the right to adequate food in context of a nutritional food security, are already in our hands. I invite all of you to use them. These are not just words on paper, they are concrete roadmaps for transforming food systems and tackling malnutrition in all its forms. Excellencies, if we are serious about ending malnutrition in all its forms, we must act with urgency, ambition, and solidarity. The challenges we face are interconnected. Our response must be equally integrated. The One Health Summit provides a powerful opportunity to reinforce this vision. Let us ensure that the spirit of Paris continues to guide us, that commitments become results, that collaboration becomes impact, and that nutrition remains central of our collective efforts. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you very much, Professor. So before we move on to the next session, which is a networking session around the reception, that is going to be upstairs in the lobby. So please stay, don't go back home. We really want to sincerely thank everyone today who has made this gathering such a success. First, our hosts, our moderators, and our panelists for their inspiring contributions. And all of you for your attentive engagement. And it's been long. Together we can truly make a difference in the fight against malnutrition. If there is one takeaway from today, it is that solutions exist. Through programmatic responses, ambitious public policies by governments, or innovative financial approach, such as ODA or soda tax. Progress is not only possible, it is within our grasp. Finally, as a UNICEF representative, I cannot close without encouraging you to learn more about the Child Nutrition Fund. This mission rests on 3 pillars: evidence, equity, and efficiency. This initiative is transforming the way we address undernutrition. Its approach coordinates global investments, double domestic contributions, and strengthens local supply chains, ensuring sustainable access to essential nutrition. But alongside the CNF, UNICEF supports the local production of nutritious, safe, affordable, and sustainable foods for young children. Launched with the African Union in Benin in September 2025, the first Food Africa initiative began in 7 countries to boost local production, improve policies, and stimulate demand. But these efforts become truly powerful only when we act together. We are counting on you to carry these issues forward. Not just today at the N4G Summit, tomorrow at the G7, but through months ahead. Together, we can turn commitments into concrete, lasting actions and significantly improve the lives of millions of women and children, as we could see today. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. So we meet upstairs for a very well-deserved drink, I think.